you're a social worker by trade. You studied, right? You became.
Yeah, macro social worker. Mm-hmm.
Okay. What is a macro social worker?
So it's not clinical. So like the overarching, like the more management side of social work. So not a clinician.
All right. But you are a psychologist. You have, well, you majored in psychology, so you know some things and in that area. So what led you to this EQ? We've been talking about EQ for the last couple of decades, like emotional quotient, like IQ, but EQ is equally as important. Tell us a little bit about EQ and how it shows up in children.
So EQ is way more important than our IQ because it's the way that we relate to people and ourselves. It's the way that we understand ourselves. And when you are able to do that, you're able to have better relationships with others. So studies have shown, I've been looking in the business world, EQ is becoming way more important. It's the soft skills. And I hate that term because they're not soft, like they're the more important skills of anything. You know, you don't want people that are harsh and angry all the time representing you or your business. So EQ is so important. So important. And it starts young. It starts very, very young.
What exactly is it? Just give us some examples of somebody with a high EQ versus somebody with a low EQ.
Yeah, so it looks different in everyone. There are people that express their emotions very openly who have a high EQ, but they look very emotional, but they understand what they're feeling. They can tell you what they're feeling. So a child, I'll use my daughter as an example. I have a 5-year-old and a 1-year-old, so you might hear some screaming back there.
Wow.
But
wow.
Yes, and working from home and all that jazz. So we do a lot of EQ in this house. But my 5-year-old, she'll do some things that she knows she's not supposed to do. And she'll come up to me and say, Mommy, I'm acting out because I'm bored. I'm like, oh, okay, thanks for telling me. But a kid with a lower EQ won't be able to say that. They'll just do stuff. They'll kick and scream and throw a tantrum and have a fit, and you won't have a clue what's going on. They don't know what's going on. And no kid wants to feel that. They don't want to experience that. It's not fun for kids to throw tantrums. So it's so important for them to know what they're feeling, to be able to understand themselves and their bodies, because our emotions are very physical too. So that's the difference, at least in kids. Adults do the same thing, but
I was going to say, child. All right. So Chelsea, well, how did you get your 5-year-old to identify that she was bored as the reason why she was? That sounds like she's been trained and cultivated to understand and recognize. So what do you do? What are the exercises?
Oh, she's been trained since birth. As soon as I found out I was pregnant, my very first thought was, oh crap, I don't want to pass on my mental health issues to my child. My very first thought, because I didn't know I could have kids. And so that was something that I hadn't worked on the way I wanted to. And so she pushed me to be a much better version of myself. But my husband and I taught her about her emotions since she was really little. We watched a lot of Daniel Tiger, and she memorized the songs. She'll sing the songs to me if she thinks I need them. But just telling her, or not telling her, but teaching her, hey, you might be feeling this if this is, what you're telling me. So she now can understand. Like one day she was upset about something, or not upset, but I was like, I know that you're upset about this. She said, I'm not upset, I'm disappointed. And I'm like, oh, okay. Ooh. Well, thank you for telling me. And I was
Chelsea, like, grown ass people cannot articulate that.
I know. I told you I said, if my child couldn't read or write, she can do both now, but if she couldn't read or write, she's going to know how she feels. So this has been a mission of my life. Like, this is something that I have always pushed for her, always. And it just took, so we do conscious parenting. So that's when you remove your emotions and your ego from your parenting, and you just let them be who they are. You teach them about who they are. You still have rules they have to follow. They don't like them. So you teach them how to get through that. So that's what conscious parenting is. So that's what we do. We talk a lot. She does not get punished. We talk a lot. And it's a lot, when she was 2, she would come up, I would say, hey, you can have your moment. When you're ready, we can have a conversation. So she'll come up to me and be like, Mommy, I'm ready to have my conversation. I'm like, okay. So we would talk, and that's all we do. And it takes a lot sometimes. It takes a lot of patience. Oh, a lot of patience, a lot of listening and helping her to understand, oh, you know what? Thank you for explaining that to me. This is probably what that is, and we can work through that. And so that's what we do. We do it all day, every day, and it is wonderful. The results, it makes parenting easier. So
right. You do the work early, so you don't have to deal with the drama later. It's interesting. I've had, Dr. Stacy Patton on, and the first time I had her on, I was struggling, with my own upbringing and feeling like my parents did everything right, even though, of course, they were 21, 23, and 25. There's no way they were doing everything right when they had me. Absolutely not. But, the whole spanking thing. And I was like, nah, that spanking works, And then she came back on after reading her book, and I was like, I get it. And then she started, explaining what physiologically happens. And then I was like, why would anyone want their child to experience that kind of physiological sexual stimulant? Do you want to sexually stimulate your child by spanking them on their butt at 2 and 3 years old, and then rewiring them so that they have this craving for that as they get no, who wants to do that? No one wants to do that, right? As a parent, you don't. But that work that it requires to be patient with a child when they're acting up, it's easier to hit them. And so I'm hearing you right now, and I'm thinking also that there are a lot of parents that don't have the time, because that talking, I've heard so many of my friends say, I'd rather get a spanking than to have my parent talk to me forever. The talking is more torturous than the beating, because that's over, right? The talking is constant.
Right, but it's torturous because it makes you evaluate yourself and it makes you think and it changes your brain. So when you know better, you do better. And some people don't want to change. And I don't believe in spankings because all behavior is communication. So if a child is acting out, they're telling you something. They are communicating something in the only way that they have been taught to do it, or the way that has worked for them. So I'm going to throw this and I'm going to get my way because that works every time I do it. Hitting does not help. You can't hit a child and tell them not to hit somebody else. So that just doesn't click for me. I was raised on spankings. People always say, oh, spankings work. Spanking. I used to think that too, because my youngest sister didn't get spanked and she is a hot mess. No, I'm just playing. I love her, but she's very
vocal and outspoken.
She's the youngest,
Right.
But she, as I've gotten older, I've told myself, if you want to spank your daughter, if you're going to hit her, do it when you're not mad. Do it when your emotions are out of that situation, and then hit her. And if it's justified, then go for it. It has not one time been justified. There is no situation that she's been in that I think, me not being upset, I would hit her. None. So it's really about ourselves and controlling our own emotions and understanding how we're feeling in a situation. We have a lot of triggers. I know that's a buzzword now, but it's a real thing. Adults have a ton of triggers. Children are very triggering because they are doing things that we weren't allowed to do when we were little. And some parents have this
jealousy almost. It's like jealousy.
Yes. I don't want, because I didn't get to do that. You're not going to get to do it either. You're not going to one up me. You're not going to get over on me. Children are not manipulative by birth. They're not manipulating you at 6 months old and at 3 months old, or even at 4 or 5. They're testing the boundaries and the limits, because what else are they supposed to do? They're growing up. They're learning new things. They're doing new things. My daughter just turned 5 a couple of weeks ago. Ooh, she's a whole different child right now. I'm like, oh, I got to parent her in a different way because she's growing up. She's doing more, and that's what they do. So there still has not been a situation she's been in where she deserves to be spanked. I don't, we're still talking. She's learning more about her emotions and her vocabulary is growing and growing. She told me one day that somebody on TV looked dismayed, and my husband and I were like, let me go back to the game and look that one up, because what? So the teaching kids about their emotions and being able to define them and how they physically feel in their bodies is something that will go with them for the rest of their lives. It changes who they are, or keeps them as they are, I should say, because we spend so much time trying to change them.
We're creating, you are creating a future where people can engage at a level that is beneficial to all. We can argue, fuss, and fight in terms of disagreeing on certain things, but how we disagree has to be with respect and dignity, but also understanding how we feel about a thing. So take us to the game. Chelsea Elliott is here. She's the CEO of SomoCom Lab, creator of EQ Kids Crew. Say that 3 times. EQ Kids Crew. Okay. What's the game? Do some games with us, because I think some adults might need to.
Oh goodness. So I have 2 versions, but I'll just talk about this little box right here. So it's called the EQ Kids Crew. It's a group of diverse children. I'll show you a picture of these little babies. These are my kids. They all have names. My daughter knows them. Actually, that one is her. It's based off a book series that I wrote for her. And so all of the kids are teaching children about different emotions. So I got permission from the creator of the emotion wheel. And so I used the 130 emotions on that wheel to create kid-friendly definitions for, 130 kid-friendly definitions.
Wait, hold on. Why am I today years old learning that there's 130 emotions?
No, there are way more than that in the real world, but this wheel just has 130 of them. They're probably like, there are most used emotions, like the most recognized ones that you'll see on a daily basis.
I think I only use like 10 or something.
Nah, you use way more than that.
130 emotions. All right, let's go. So what are they?
So I'm not going to go through all 130 because there's so many.
No, I know. Wait. So pause before you do that. So
yes,
we usually operate in anger, fear, and happiness. I think most people like understand anger, fear, and happiness, and that's our default in everything. And
we're only allowed to be happy, right? We're only ever allowed to be happy. That's what, we were raised on. Oh, what's wrong with you? Fix your face. Don't do this. Don't do that. Like, why are you not happy? So we also have bad feelings, like feeling busy or feeling bored or stressed. We're surprised, in a good way or a bad way, being startled, being shocked, whatever it is. And we can be disgusted by something. So there are a lot of different emotions that we have. They branch out into others. And so the wheel goes deeper into those emotions. So the 7 core, and then it goes deeper into those emotions so that it can give you more an expanded vocabulary. So if you're feeling humiliated, are you feeling disrespected in that? Or are you feeling ridiculed? Like there's so many different ways to define it. So the more you know, the deeper you can go and the better you'll be at handling them.
What's the difference between envious, jealous, and resentful? Because those seem to be in the same bucket.
I think feeling envious is like, oh goodness, you were asking some questions. So feeling envious and feeling jealous, there are some differences in that. I was not prepared for that question at this moment, but I think that's okay. I think jealousy is more surface level and envy is more on a deeper internal level. And what was the other one? I'm so sorry.
Resentful, which I imagine has something to do with the relationship, because you can be envious of someone or jealous of someone you have no relationship with. But I'm imagining resentful is relationship oriented, like
or like something that you feel like you should have done or didn't do, and so you resent that situation, or you feel all that resent in that moment.
Okay. All right. Let's get to the cards. Let's do some of these. And this is y'all, where can people get the cards?
So they're on pre-order right now. They are, I have the smaller version. So I didn't want to scare people because let me just finish explaining the game. There is a lot to it. So there are the 130 emotions. That's a big deck. And then there are 100 different behavior regulating strategies that kids can use. So I separated them between calm body activities for the emotions that, are higher energy. I don't like to call them good or bad. So they're higher energy emotions. So feeling excited or anxious or frustrated. And then there are comfort activities for the lower energy emotions. So feeling sad or down or, let down. So there are different activities that the kids can choose. And then there's a spinning wheel, and children love spinning wheels. So this is what randomizes the game, basically. So with the smaller version, I only did 48 of those emotions. So it's the middle of the circle and just the second ring. So it's only 48 of those. And there are 10 of those behavior regulating activities and 14 different scenarios that adults can talk through kids with about, like, if you were going through this or you saw someone going through this, how would that feel? And so with the cards, they'll read the definitions, learn about it, and then talk about how it physically feels in their bodies, because that's really important to know. They can draw it out if that's something that they want to do. They can act out what that emotion looks like or a situation that they've been in with that, or they can talk about a time that they felt that. And so I think that is really important to be able to dive deeper into it in a way that the child would understand, or even the adults, because a lot of adults don't know all 130 of these emotions. So just being able to do those activities on the cards, and then having some behavior regulators, because that's really what kids need. They need a way to manage their bodies when they're feeling something that is uncomfortable to them. And a lot of our emotions are uncomfortable. So that's the game.
Okay. All right. Now, where do people get the game?
They can get the game on my website, somocomlab.com. And right now, like I said, it's on pre-order. So
So that's SOMOCOM, somocomlab.com, SOMOCOM lab.com.
Yep.
Okay. Now, what if I'm not trained as a psychologist or macro social worker? Like I'm just a regular person who works a couple of jobs. I'm really frustrated when I come home. I'm tired actually. And I have a 2 or 3 year old wanting to tell me how disgusted they are about something. It's just not on my to-do list, but I'm a parent. So I got to force myself to listen to the constant chatter, and don't let it be a little girl, because they can never shut up. I don't know what that is, but I'm just saying, what do you do with that?
So like I said, we have to take ourselves out of our children. We have to remove ourselves from them. They're not just little versions of us. They're their own people. So yes, we can get frustrated and be upset, but we still need to respect that they're their own person. They do have a lot of energy, but we're here to support them in that. So this version, the second version that I created, is for those parents. Like it can be overwhelming, it can be big, it can be a lot. So this version is for parents. It's a lot gentler. There's not so much to it. You can just set the cards out and just go to town, just have the kids talk. And kids really love the characters. So I created those diverse characters so kids could see themselves in that. And so they can learn to have empathy for other children that don't look like them. So
I absolutely love this. I think we should get this game as adults. How does that play?
Like, I know.
So when COVID is over and we have some time to come together, I would like to use these cards in an adult setting. What would that look like?
I think it would be the same thing. The only thing that's really kid about it is the little kids on it. That's really
all right. So we could just put a paper over that, and because I think for real, and a lot of us have been taught to stuff our emotions because we have to get through, we have to work through, but we're walking around with epigenetic trauma, family drama, we have childhood PTSD. Stuff, all of it, right? And we're gonna have Dr. Robin on, but she comes on once a month. Many of us are not in therapy regularly. We should be, but we're not, because most of us are not in touch with our emotions to be able to even articulate, because to say a thing, I think, gives it life, but it also allows you to then wrap your hands around it, gather it up.
Yeah. And it requires a vulnerability that a lot of people are uncomfortable with. And if we aren't raised to be okay with being uncomfortable, it's hard to get into that space. So I am a huge proponent for therapy. Like I said, did not want to be a clinician because of my own mental health challenges, but this is like my way to give back and to support families in a way that, can help those people that don't think they need it or don't really want it. It's really for adults. It's just cute for kids, but it's really for the grown-ups, because we have to make a change within ourselves to make that change in our families.
I'm gonna tell you, as a person that's been teaching most of my life, the first time I taught was some kids in Harlem English grammar, which I didn't myself have a handle on. So I'm learning the grammar before I teach. I'm like, okay, just out of college, I'm learning, but it was the best teaching assignment ever because I got to learn. And I think, this seems to be similar. What's the one emotion on that among the 130 plus that you most struggled with, Chelsea?
Oh, grief. I didn't even need to look. Grief is a huge struggle for me, humongous struggle for me. I'm a huge empath. And so I feel everyone's everything all the time. And so that's grief is very heavy on me. So that's something my 5-year-old has been making me work through. I lost my grandfather a couple of years ago. And I usually just try to blink the person out of my mind and just forget that they existed, because it's just safer that way, right? It's my coping mechanism. And she has forced me, she talks about him all the time. Don't know why. She didn't meet him very much. She talks about him almost every day. And she has forced me to deal with that. So I know it's a God thing, because everybody else is here. So there's no reason for her to be talking about him the way she does, other than to force me to deal with it. So,
your little girl is amazing.
I love her.
I think what's her name?
Natalie.
Chelsea. Natalie has been here before. There's something really, really special about that child. It's beyond you doing what you're doing here, which is great. But she sounds like all of the things. And your 1-year-old,
Olivia. She's an old soul too. I can already tell.
Liv, she's got old eyes.